After you graduated high school, did you go to college in the area or work in the area?
My first job that summer was at S&H Crest Store, which the building is still there. It's on the corner there at Church Street and Orange Avenue. And my department that summer was the stationery department. I was 17 years old and very, very proud of myself. I ended up quitting the job because I wanted to go see a cousin of mine who had just had a baby, and there was no way my father was going to let me go because he wanted me to quit that job because he was afraid I would not go to college. And of course I was going to college. And so I went to Orlando Junior College and finished there for the 2 years. And then later got married, and so it was a few years before I got back to college and finished up at Rollins College.
Mm-hmm. And what was your degree in at Rollins?
Elementary education. So I ended up teaching at a private school here locally.
What school was that?
St. Charles.
And where is it located?
On Edgewater Drive in, let's see, between Parr and Lee Road.
And what did you teach at the school?
Well, my favorite grade to teach was second grade, but I taught, I guess you'd say, all the way up to fifth grade, but basic, like I said, mostly just second grade. That was my favorite. I was a stern teacher, but a disciplinarian, but I believed in having fun. And with my second graders, we had a party every month. There was always a good excuse for having a party. And that's part of education, to give children a chance to open up and do creative things in a fun way. Their education should incorporate all studies together. You don't just teach math by itself. You bring all your disciplines together as one. Art, science. My science and art classes and math classes were all together.
Now, having grown up in the area and lived for so long in the Pine Hills and Orla Vista area, I'm sure you've seen lots of places come and go through the years. Do you have a favorite business or park or restaurant or anything that you used to frequent that is now no longer around and you just really miss that place?
Oh, I can't really say because, like I say, my childhood was mostly, well, we went all over, and of course Lake Eola. Lake Eola was the center of, before I ever started school when I was a young child, and kindergarten, and like say in junior high school, that's where we majorettes practiced. Band practice was very often there, marching. So I liked all of Orlando. And speaking of being in the band, one of the most memorable trips, and we made a couple of our band director, Mr. Stivers, at Memorial. In those days, they were able to take junior high school kids off campus a little bit more than they can today. As I said earlier, we had lots of freedom at that school. And so one of the most rewarding trips that we made was when I had heard about, I had an aunt that had worked at the sanitarium off of Hiwassee Road. She had worked there, I guess during World War II.
Is that the Sunland?
No, well, it later became Sunland, but it was a TB sanitarium. And so when I was in junior high school, we paid a visit to that sanitarium, and the soldiers that had TB, they would bring them to the windows on one side of the building, and they had chairs set up, and we played a concert for them. Then when we finished playing several tunes for them, then we would walk around to the other side of the building where they already had chairs set up for us, and we played again on that side. And they just kept rotating us around until we had played all four sides. But the memory of seeing those men there, I still want to cry, seeing those men, how much they appreciated. And, we were junior high school, so, we didn't probably sound all that great, but to those guys we did. And I'll always be thankful for that opportunity. Yes, later years, it became a Sunland Center. And again, I had the opportunity to go in there. And I really don't want to talk about it too much because it was a very, very sad, humiliating place for children to be warehoused in. And it was a good thing that the federal government calls these places, these warehouses of children and adults, to be closed. This was inhumane, and I speak not as a child. I was an adult when I went to both that one and the one up in Gainesville, so I do know from where I speak.
Are you currently, or have you ever belonged to any local associations or organizations in the area?
I am presently the chairman of Orla Vista United Safe Neighborhood. And I had been the PB, pain in the butt, for several years, and they elected me, I guess I was such a good pain in the butt, that they elected me as their chairman. I lived in Winter Park, and that's where I raised my daughter. And after my father died, I moved out here to Orla Vista to be with my mother. And she has since passed on, and after she passed on, then I became active in Orla Vista. I used to live in Winter Park. I was one of several people that represented my church in a group called Bridge Builders in Winter Park. We worked with the city of Winter Park to help empower the people that lived in the Hannibal Square area. Developers were coming in and taking advantage of the elderly people there by lowballing what they paid for the properties, and then they would bulldoze the homes down, and then the property that they had bought for like $35,000 or less was suddenly worth $250,000. Mm-hmm. And this was very distasteful to many of us. So, and my first family fun day that I ever planned was actually over at the community center over in Winter Park. Let's see, on the 26th of this month, we'll be doing what I think our fourth family fun day at Orla Vista Park. So I have continued this, brought it to the neighborhood that I grew up in, but I felt that if I could help to improve a neighborhood that I didn't even live in Winter Park, then I should definitely do what I could for the neighborhood that I grew up in. It has become very, very ill, like so many areas in this country, from people's drug abuse. And I used to hear gunshots coming from the Orla Vista Park every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. I have not heard the first gunshot coming from that park in over a year since the Orange County Sheriff's Department, Sheriff Demings, and our Orange County commissioners, Commissioner Scott Boyd, were able to get a sheriff deputy and his young family living in the park. And this has been a great blessing to this community. And we're very, very grateful for everything that the Orange County Commissioners and the Sheriff's Department is doing for our community.
What's one of your best memories about living in the Pine Hills, Orla Vista area?
Best memories. Well, when I grew up, like I keep saying, we had so much more freedom. And so we were fortunate enough in those days that we actually could have chickens and ducks and geese. And in our family, if you named it, you didn't eat it. So I was permitted, or I guess I should say, I went out and loved them, but I don't. And I did name a few ducks, and we didn't eat them. They got to die of old age. But my father was even able to bring young calves from T.G. Lee Dairy to the house, and we were able to love them and bottle feed them until they were old enough to be put out to pasture. And it's just so important for young children to be around animals like that. My parents let me have my own little plot of land, to have my own little garden when I was a child, and I always enjoyed doing that in the spring. My church that I grew up in, which was called Irwin Memorial Methodist Church, and it was on Oxford. I actually grew up on the corner of Oxford and Putnam, but whenever long after I left home, when the zip codes came in, the post office changed the names of our streets. And so Oxford and Putnam no longer exist in Orla Vista. They are now John Street in Washington. And so Irwin Memorial Methodist Church, the minister there, he was a mailman for College Park, and he was able to get his wealthy clients that wintered in Florida to make donations for him to build that church. And so it had stained glass windows in it. That church now is called Missionary of God Church, and the Methodist Church moved out to Kirkman Road, and most of the stained glass windows went into that church. We transferred there. The church, Irwin Memorial, was built on the Spanish mission style.
Well, thank you very much for your time today.
I have wandered and wandered, and I could go.
That's okay. It was fascinating to hear.